developing books for the mobile platform, we just had a very interesting discussion downstairs on reconfiguring the book, and I think this session aims at demystifying some of those terms, or kind of make sure that we understand some of the terminologies that are being used in the technology world, in the publishing field. So let me start with what I would like to cover in this small session. So what are some of the popular e-reader mobile devices that are out there available? And when you say mobile, people, each one has a different perspective. Some people think it's reading on a mobile phone. Some people think that it's a tablet. Some people think it is reading on a Kindle or a Kobo or a Sony reader or a Nook. So some people think e-book read on a laptop. So let's try to define some of those so that we have the scope of the discussion pretty clear. And then to understand some of the main types of ebooks. Again, ebooks is a very generic term, like anything starting from a PDF all the way EPUB 3 or app books. Let's understand what some of these are. And going next is some of the key tools and technologies used to create ebooks. And once we know that, to understand how can I create ebooks or distribute ebooks and in a secure fashion. Okay? Then at the end of it, we have another session from Rich on the ROI of mobile development and investment. Let's get to some of the demystifying some of the names that's out there. So when we talk about mobile devices, you would have heard some of these. Most of the basic e-reading happens on Kindle, Kobo, or Sony, or Nook platforms. So these are, you have heard about Android-based tablets, phones. I think the most popular one that comes to our mind is Samsung Galaxy or HTC phones, etc., which these are essentially run on Android platforms. Then the main thing is an Apple platform, iPhones or iPads and the likes. And the new entrant into this area is Windows Mobile. So you have heard about the new Windows 8 that's getting released, which is having the capability of publishing on mobile platform as well. Moving on to again the most important types of ebooks. So I'm trying to classify it into three areas: basic, enhanced, and app books. And self-explained. The basic is it's all simple, not too much of images, with not much of interaction, and pretty small size, which can be easily transmitted over a wireless network, etc. So some of the formats on the basic ebooks are EPUB, which is the standard provided by IDPF, which is the International Digital Publishing Forum. And MOBI, that's the format that is used in an Amazon device, that's Kindle devices. So to show some of the examples, so I have some images of the basic ebook that looks in a reader. So this is how it's going to be. So what you see on the left is the Amazon Kindle. What you see on top is the Kobo reader, right Sony, and below you see the Nook. Okay, back to the same slide. The enhanced ebook. Okay, so the formats: EPUB 3, Kindle Fire 8, etc. These supports embedded phones, audio and video, HTML5 support, etc. So the books generated in this particular format will have a slightly different, enriched or much more enriched look and feel. And there is some of images from the fixed layout from on iPad. And the next one, another important one, you would have seen some of the demos down, which was shown as at the end of the last session, was on app books, right, which are much more feature rich, which can have illustrations, animations, audio, video, etc. So it's used by different technology again, depending on the platforms. For Apple platform, it's mostly on export, and on an Android platform, it's done in Java. But HTML5, CSS could be a common thread across all these platforms as well. So again, to see how some of these are going to look like. Yeah. So the top, the right, what you see is a book written by former US Vice President Al Gore on and what you see at the bottom is something which our company is currently working on and almost ready to be launched. Going to the tools and technologies that one have to use to create these books in different formats. The basic ebook, there's an open source software that's available called Calibre, or InDesign is another software from Adobe that's used for creating EPUB format. And for the Amazon Kindle, you generate using a software called KindleGen, which is given free of cost from Amazon. And the format that will be generated by the tool is called Mobi. The next one is enhanced ebook. We have heard about the recent software from Apple called iBooks Author, and we have some plugins for the InDesign for fixed layout EPUB. All these are going to create books with the latest standards of EPUB 3 from IDEA. And app books again, as it's a more custom development, the development time frame involved or the effort will be much more elaborate in this kind of a model, and the interactivity as well as the options for creating animations, etc. is much more here. Moving on to some of the, let's say, I wouldn't say workflow, but some of the prerequisites that you do as before preparing an ebook. Right? So you start with the regular file which you typically prepare for a PDF or a Word document. It needs to be clean to have some of the controls removed, like removing the page numbers, headers, etc., formatting of the tables, images, having the chapters put properly, table of contents. And the other key thing is metadata of the file. Once you do that, you can input that to one of the tools which was mentioned on the previous slide, and it gets converted, and you can validate those through some of the validator tools. And most important, testing on various devices. Nowadays, devices comes in all sizes and shapes, with different screen sizes, reads different types of files, etc. And so exhaustive testing on different operating systems, different device sizes is a must before we think of releasing to any of the stores. So another key aspect is, okay, once you create the ebook, how do you distribute it? Right? Again, multiple ways to do it. One is your own online e-commerce ebook store portal. The other most popular one you see on the online stores of the likes of Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, Apple iBooks, Sony Bookstore, etc. Another way is there are ebook aggregators who actually do this as a service for you. You can actually give it to them and they take care of the distribution process all by yourself, and then as and when the sale happens, they track it and share the revenue back with you. So, and about the app books, you have for the Android platforms, you need to actually put this on a store called Google Play, a store by Google, and the other one for Apple platform, it is the App Store. So that's a place from where you download it on iPhone as well as an iPad platform. Again, another key question which comes up from a lot of publishers again on the security of the ebooks, right? So the digital rights management part of it. So it's and digital rights management. There are multiple tools available. Again, it's the technology that limits copying or printing. It gives control to the seller of the digital content. It prevents the end user from copying it or sharing it with somebody else. There are multiple ways with which this DRM technology can be implemented. There are even technologies available where the book automatically gets destroyed after a few days or weeks, depending on the configuration. Right? So, and some of the most popular DRMs, Adobe, Kindle, and there are some custom DRMs from different proprietary vendors. That's pretty much I want to cover on the development of ebooks. You can take any questions that you have at this time, or maybe you can go ahead with the session on the ROI or on this, and then we can take it at the end.
You mentioned that there were three basic types. Yeah. So these app books, I can view these on multiple devices also? Or
yes, app books are mainly for the Apple as well as the Android platforms.
Okay.
Yes, these are the books that it's bought as an app from an App Play Store or a Google Play Store.
Yeah.
Just as a follow-on to the question, there's international statistics about how many users are going to the Apple App Store and how many are accessing Google Play and other Android platforms. Are there any statistics about how many users from India are accessing this content? So as a content provider or as an author from India, let's say, if you want to create an app, which would you recommend using?
Once we have launched,
Wider audience.
yeah, I know it's a very important question, and still we don't have a complete answer. But once you have an app that is launched on these stores, you can definitely track. Right?
If you had to choose between either.
Yeah, but these companies are not going to give us the data from where this is coming from, and that kind of statistics are not available as yet. Or we know the statistics, the smartphone usage as well as the mobile platform usage is going up in a big way in India as well. So hopefully or potentially these are our customers. But
If I can just add to that point, right, I think you can get some sense of the adoption of platforms by looking at advertisements coming in newspaper and TV. When you look at them, they're mostly Micromax, Samsung, right? So I mean, if there's a real push on the street by some vendors, the chances are they're going to succeed, right? As against hoping that Apple and Google will do some magic sitting in USA, right? So I think the safer bet is to go for that platform and try to find sufficient number of adoption with your friends and family kind of network, so you can justify your phase one of your investment there.
So do we need to develop separately for both platforms? So if I'm making an app, I'll have to make a separate app for the Apple Store and a separate app for the Android Store?
yes,
Is that what you think?
yes, that's
And
right.
does that mean that it's a double investment?
Yes.
Yes. Does it mean a double investment?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah?
Now I can add to that. So you are partially right. you need to deploy these apps separately for Google Play and separately for Apple. But today there are some rapid deployment, app deployment tools available. They're called Corona. Adobe recently bought this company called PhoneGap. There are 3 or 4 worldwide accelerators. There are 3 rapid deployment tools available where you develop one app and simultaneously deploy for Apple and Android and Windows, etc. So till now it has been developed separately in parallel and having multiple costs. But today you have these tools available, which some of the companies like we also are now working with one of them. We develop once, deploy it.
They're called accelerators.
No, they are called rapid deployment tools. The 3 world leaders are Accelerator, PhoneGap, and Corona.
What is the basic format you develop?
So it's a kind of, some of them like Accelerator works on HTML5. So everything is developed on HTML5 and then completely packaged into an export project. It automatically generates the code for your iPad project, Android project, etc. Some like PhoneGap, which Adobe recently bought, works on a kind of custom platform, which is they have their script which you have to use to and it automatically again generates code for each one.
So, in terms of vendors of people who make apples, such as you, do you choose? I mean, do you sort of because I mean, I'm just trying to understand from the back end how does it work? Because do you sort of decide that we work on Android and we work on Apple, or do you don't have a choice and you have to have both platforms running because that's what the customer wants?
I think in some cases demand comes from the customer, but if we are the driving seat based on like either our content or customers relying on our advice, we say pick the platform which is like the shortest to your monetization targets, and use that to kind of get out to the market quickly and then learn the conversion process and all that. And then diversify.
No, what I meant was that as a customer, do I have an option of going to one vendor and getting both done, or are there specialist vendors in different applications? So, like to state that, I would go to Jibin to get my Apple thing done, but I should go to Bridge to get my Android thing done, because both of them have specialty areas in those applications. Does it work like that?
There's no clear answer to that. I think best is to ask them what they have done recently. Show them their work.
Yeah, these are
No, but then that's going to be very difficult, no? But if you look at it from a customer's perspective who doesn't understand, the technology behind it, I'm sure at the end of it, both apps look the same. So there's no difference. I wanted the 20 features, I'm getting the 20 features, but it's like stating, should I develop in ASP.NET or in PHP? The result that you get is the same. But there are companies who work in .NET and there are companies who work in PHP.
No, there are some differences there. I think you need to put the question in different way, not in the technology sense, but more like how much will it cost, right? And how much is reusable in the development process, right? Okay, storyboard you can reuse, right?
Okay.
And some of the creatives you can reuse.
Okay.
I mean, the hardcore development process that may not be reusable because of differences in platforms, right?
Okay.
And testing process can be leveraged to some extent. You create test case one time, use it in both platforms, right?
Okay.
So those things can be managed. Yeah.
Just to follow on, I understand first Apple then selects once you upload the app, then approves, and only then does it go to the iTunes store.
Yes.
Is there a similar selection process for the Android market?
Yes, but it is much more simpler, and the chances of an Android rejections are much lower on the Android side. Yeah. So Apple.
Does that explain the proliferation of Android apps?
Yes. So, but that can actually lead to some quality issues as well. So the apps that you see on the Android market store versus what you see on the App Store.
If I can bring it back to ebooks, I'm still confused about Indian script support. EPUB 3 claims to have it. EPUB 3 even doesn't support Indian script.
That's more of a specification, and vendors have to implement that specification.
Vendors meaning
Amazon and Google.
Okay, so yeah, I understand that the Kindle doesn't have it, but for the iPad, for the Sony reader, which are supposed to have, I mean, you can read Japanese books on this dial. I'm still a little confused as to how do I make a file with some Tamil in it.
So you can do that on iPad today. On iOS.
And if I sell it, if I upload it to an Apple aggregator, I can be sure that it'll show up correctly for anyone whose
Yes.
device supports it.
Yes, I would say yes.
Sorry, the one thing is today, at least to my knowledge, Apple and Amazon, when you submit an ebook, it will ask for language of the book. There, it has only 7 languages, like Spanish, French, blah, blah, blah. If you try say none of the above, it will say sorry. And even Barnes and Noble, you submit a book to their store, they say sorry, we do not support your language at the moment. We will let you know when we support your language. So the only way today to have an Indian language ebook read this, you develop your own reader device that supports all this, or create an app on iPad and Android that solves this problem.
Is there any lobby among Indian publishers or publishing agencies to get these languages supported? So this seems like a terrible situation.
There's one discussion thread on Google Forum. I mean, I think it started in somewhere in 2007. I mean, still randomly some people come in 2012 complaining to Google about why it's not supported, right?
Yeah.
So maybe there's not enough market pull, or Google is not facing enough reputation damage from media or something like that. It's just not there.
But as far as we know, there's just one Google discussion group that's pulling for this.
There's also the W3C consortium in India now, and they sit out of the Delhi office, Delhi Directorate of HR.
Okay.
You can contact them if you really, because they are developing a whole mechanism of supporting these at the W3C level.
So I feel like there's a lot of people at this conference who should be fighting really hard. to
Let's
have
take it to the
action.
streets.
Yeah,
Let's take it to
yeah.
the streets, yeah.
I see putting in EPUB 3 reader solves most of the problem because you can access all the devices, but is there any solution that's available for fixed layout books especially?
Fixed layout EPUBs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's meant for the iPad. So
Only on iPad too. So what are the other, if the fixed layout book have to go into other devices?
The key thing is, sorry, I can answer that. For EPUB 3, it's an experimental standard. Even today, I think there are discussions on how to implement it. There are hardly any EPUB 3 ready readers available. There is a guy called Azadi that is supposed to be world's first EPUB 3 reader for Windows. And on that, if you open a fixed layout EPUB that you do for iPad, it sometimes doesn't work well. That's because the standards have been so new. But fixed layout EPUB today, to read very well, I think you have to use iBooks Author and read it on your iPad. It works perfectly. Barnes & Noble Nook color version also supposedly supports fixed layout. You have tried seeing some, but I think iPad is the best platform for reading fixed layout. Because as EPUB 3 is pretty new and standard implementations are varying from one to one. InDesign only recently released EPUB 3 support. Where EPUB 3 sometimes we tried or multimedia EPUB 3. It's not working on Azadi's EPUB, for example. So there are some issues that we still have. But fixed layout EPUB, I think iPad is the best one.
You may take something developed for iPad for fixed layout book.
Yes.
It will have to be redesigned for some other device.
Did you say InDesign now supports Indian scripts?
Sorry?
InDesign now supports Indian scripts, is that right?
No, not it. I said for fixed layout EPUB and EPUB 3. InDesign recently only added their support. Indian language support has been there with InDesign for long.
Yeah? Oh, as a plugin.
Sorry?
As a plugin.
What do you mean as Indian language support in InDesign? Is it like you can edit Indian language words in?
Yeah.
You can.
You can.
Indian language.
It's just a font.
It's a font.
It's a
You
word
can-
processing software.
Yeah, it's a word processing
Yeah.
software.
Okay, he's talking about native complex support in coding.
That's not bad.
That's not
That's not bad.
That's
So,
not
I mean,
bad.
there's-
Eventually, when you have to, for the Indian languages, when you have to take it to EPUB to make it work, it'll have to be in EPUB to
Yeah.
make the best sense of it.
Agree.
So, by editing some proprietary font in InDesign,
Yes.
You weren't going to.
You have to embed that font and it will open up in some of the ebook readers as long as font embedding.
Yeah.
And InDesign Export has an option to embed that font inside.
So there is no Indian version of InDesign like French and Spanish.
Oh, you mean Indian version of?
That's
I mean what he's talking about. I just
You can
I
export.
want to be able to edit the
You can
font.
export Hindi EPUB from InDesign. It's possible. And some I can show you
The
on
proprietary font.
Sorry, with the proprietary.
But like,
No,
you're-
what we actually require
Yeah.
is, which is what we are attempting to do anyway, edit it in the proprietary font in InDesign, port it as proprietary font EPUB, do a translation at that point, which is just a file translation using a software, which just changes it into Unicode, then set it up. I mean, it's just it's a tool. Well, I will do it in a
One question, if you have HTML5 apps, you can build once and use it everywhere.
Again, on the Android platforms, along with HTML5, you need Java to make an app. On the Apple platform, it's the export.
So you have to create a HTML5 and build a wrapper around it.
Yes.
The shell will be platform specific, but if you're relying on stores and aggregators, then probably you can bypass the problem.
In fact, Amazon's Kindle Gen 2 has been recently upgraded to accept HTML5, formatted HTML5 files, which you will accept and convert into Kindle Fire ebooks, which you can then submit to the Amazon store. If it is just an ebook, not an app, it is just
So no more questions on this? We can proceed to the next session.
Thank you.
So I had the honor of doing the most important presentation, which is the last presentation, right? Show me the money. So I'm just going to, there's no attempt to kind of like do a very complex spreadsheet model about the ROI on mobile apps or e-publishing. But the idea is to kind of set the stage at a very high level in terms of what should we be aiming for in this project and what should be our investment and what are the investment components in terms of executing project and how should we be looking at returns, right? Because returns means many things to many people. So, I just have very small 3 slides and I'll just quickly finish it, come back to question and answer. I think that's a more effective format for us. So, I think the most important part is like, why do digital publishing, right? Whether it's EPUB or apps or some derivative aspect around it, right? So, why are we doing it, right? I mean, for some company, if it's not publisher, but with some content, they might want to use it to build brand awareness, right? You want more people to know about your brand, so you're using some kind of app for that. So justification for that might come from the other revenue channel tied to the brand, right? And for some publishers, the motivation might be to generate demand for print version. So they don't want to they don't want to make money from the apps or EPUB, but just kind of like an enticement or generate awareness for the print version. And I've seen some companies do that. Like Penguin has an app just as it's like a catalog app. You just download an iPhone and just go through their titles. That is one example. And in some case, the goal might be to kind of like, okay, we have done the book, now we can do the ebook and make some money out of it, right? I think that's kind of like the most popular motivation, I would say. Yeah. And sometimes the motivation comes from like, hey, we have hit upon a great content and this will make for a great movie, right? So let's figure out the logistics of doing that, like adapting it for comics or for TV episodes. So you can take your base content and almost create a new project for a different platform. So there the goals are different, the investment model is going to be different. And on the other extreme is the transmedia project, which is kind of like the very ambitious, from scratch, big budget, kind of like what Amar Shikatha is doing with Sons of Rams. I mean, they are taking like 2-3 years to make a movie, which is loosely based on comic book, which they were having in their backlist, and now thinking about having multiple apps for that and on different platforms as kind of like a marketing promotion for the movie, right? So I think, but that's on the extreme end. And sometimes the motivation is just kind of like get more revenue by being on more distribution points, right? So you have this real fragmentation on distribution on the online front. So you just want to be seen at more places, right? So that's sort of like a very high-level list of all the goals in digital publishing projects. So in terms of investment, obviously the bulk of the investment from the publishing side is that the research which goes into what we should be publishing on the digital platforms, right? And this is a relatively new area in terms of figuring out what are the trending statistics on, whether it's on Amazon or Apple top list, what is selling on iBookstore. So it almost calls for somebody to kind of like check every day or every week what is selling, right? And then going back to your backlist or catalog to figure out, okay, these titles make great sense to be put on these platforms, right? So it requires a dedicated effort in terms of somebody, whether it's from editorial side or from the marketing side, looking at what is selling out there, right? And how it is getting packaged. What is the sort of like the most preferred packaging of that content, right? So there's a great deal of research and awareness has to go into it. Sometimes we don't kind of like put the dollar value on that effort, and we get surprised by the outcome when it comes to evaluating the ROI. And the second component is the technology and the whole skills around it, right? And we just had a big discussion before this session. I mean, because of this space is moving so fast, every 3 months a new SDK coming on these devices, and every 3 months new devices coming. I mean, and we have 3 horse race right now: Amazon, Apple, and Google, and Microsoft is just about to join that party. So, can your developers scale to all 4 platforms? Or you need to have 4 different vendors for those 4 platforms? I mean, how much of that you should be doing in-house versus outsourcing it? And those are pretty big questions. And I think depending on at what level you're coming, or a small publisher or a big publisher, your answers might vary in a huge way. Right? And the third part is slightly political and funny in the sense that when you're doing a project with content owners, in the middle of the project, and somebody takes a re-look at the content or the creative side of it, right? I mean, the editor or a writer wakes up that doesn't like the yellow color there, right? And goes back to the tech team, hey guys, can you change this now, right? It doesn't look good on Kindle 7, right? So, and we had pretty much in all our engagements that kind of issues, and they really kind of like destroy the whole ROI model. So, I mean, engineers and developers are like doing this and not doing something else. Right? So for us, the technology side, we have kind of like an opportunity to either work on this or work on some games or some productivity software or some business software. Right? So the question comes, how much we want to be engaged in this iterative process of refining your apps or refining your content till everybody's happy. Right? So those cycles are, I mean, sometimes you're lucky you can get away by 2 cycles, sometimes 3, 4. I mean, Shobha doesn't like font. Is she here? Right? So we spent 2 months figuring out how to do the right font placement in this app, right? And when you start your project, that font issue never shows up on your spreadsheet, right? So those were some real challenges we had. And right from the start, leaving some budget for marketing, right? And that's something I've seen people kind of just, we'll deal with that later on, right? And then when we do that, we come to the marketing part, we find that we didn't allocate enough budget for it, right? And that kind of like plays heavily on the overall success of the project. So our recommendation is that right from the start, have sufficient budget freezed for marketing purpose. And marketing in a new way, right? The App Store optimization, research on keywords, and making YouTube videos for your apps or books, and identifying 10-15 bloggers who care about your content category. So some of those things you can do in parallel. And there are always surprises, right? There are always some big shift during the project, right? So do you have any dollar allocated for surprises, right? I mean, Kindle Fire high definition has come out now, which is kind of like going to be very soon the #1 rival to iPad, right? And supported by Amazon's massive content machinery, right? So it almost makes the case that, okay, we need to support Kindle Fire now, right? But did we allocate any budget for those things? Probably not, right? So I'm not saying we need to chase all these, but be flexible. I mean, one thing we found hard to communicate is that you can do all that if you slash your scope by 1/3, right? And if you have 100 titles in mind, let's just do 20 to begin with, right? Or 40 or something like that. So that you leave some money for other things which you're going to find down the road. Right? And how do we evaluate returns? Right? And return means many things to many people. I mean, if you talk to Pratham books, they have different definition about returns. And if you talk to somebody who's just up and coming, young publishing startup, they just want to get in the market, right? So they will define their success in different ways. And for an established publisher, I mean, of course, you want to just measure per dollars, right? And how much money they're making in hard currency. And sometimes, if you're driven by cause, I mean, if your cause is some particular theme-based publishing, so you just want to send your message out, so you're just counting it by the number of downloads, right? Or the number of reviews, people talking about it. So there is many ways we can measure the impact of a project, right? So early on, identifying in a very small scope project, what is the actual ROI return for this particular project is very important to kind of like coming out on a nice happy tone at the end of it. And sometimes you just want some very audacious, bold project just to prove a point, right? You know that it makes law, but that's an important experiment you want to do to test some hypothesis, right? So that's another. So that's just a very high level context setting, 3 slides, and so I just want to kind of open up for questions and share your stories. I mean, if you are actively doing project, what kind of ROI model you have built, or if you're trying to start something new, I mean, what are the metrics you want to attack? You'd love to answer those.
So can I just ask one question? You spoke about marketing and budgets for this thing. So, and you spoke about 3-4 things there. You spoke about App Store optimization, keyword search, bloggers, identifying them, and creating YouTube videos. So, as a publisher, when the development of an app is sort of decided and it's given to a vendor, are these services that are sort of included in the package? Are they separate? Are there same companies who do this exercise, or are they in the web world there are companies who create websites and then there are companies who do search engine optimization? Completely 2 different categorizations. There are companies who do both. So how does it work in this space?
So I think because we started early on the app side, so we have some awareness on like what is working in the app store, right? And how people are playing the keyword game, and how they're playing the Friday pricing game, and how they're like keeping different prices in different markets. So some of that awareness has come to us because we are in that market, right? But very quickly the SEO guys are coming on the app store side also, right? And because they are kind of like mandated to learn this space.
Because they already understand keyword search.
Right, but they're loudspeaker business. They have to like raise noise about some message, right? So they are more like driven to answer this problem. Right? And they're doing a good job, I would say. Like there are already some tools. I mean, I don't know the name of the app store.info where you can go in and you can enter an app name and you can suggest what keyword that app might have used.
Something like the Google AdWords
Yeah, the
program.
keyword recommendation tool, right? And which is like, it makes a huge difference. I mean, huge. There's no comparison. If you can pick the right keyword,
Absolutely.
it can really make a huge impact, right? So I think the answer is both. Sometimes we help, but there are specialists who do a better job than us.
How much the technological changes affecting your development? Like you said, in SDK every 3 months, in HD, how much does it have a say on your development costs or your whole strategy itself?
It is. I mean, stressful sometimes. There's one specific project we did for a very publisher recently, and we ran into a problem where the app size went more than 15 MB. Now Google Play has this Google extension library which just recently came out. So customer reads about this somewhere and they force us to use it, right? Let's use Google extension library, and then you end up being like a guinea pig that, okay, you're the first guy to implement the feature we just came out.
Yeah.
So managing that thing like this becomes very complicated.
So in the work that you've done so far, can you sort of name any app or any publisher in India who's actually made some hardcore money out of I mean, just like the thing, I mean, I'm not saying, I completely agree with the other ROI. You know, the same thing gets stated to a lot of other things in the normal web world as well, right? So what is the ROI of doing a search engine optimization also is something which is a question that everybody asks each time, even today, even though it's a 6-year-old industry now. But in the context of the fact that, you know, branding is an ROI, I completely understand there are ways and means to figure that out. But in terms of actual money, that somebody is being satisfied. So I'm not talking about the fact that they're making crores or lakhs or whatever, but whatever they thought they would achieve, have people been able to, in your experience?
I would say if you put that whole thing against the timeline, I think my answer would be yes. Right? And I mean, one thing I quickly learned by sharing download numbers with our publishers, right? The mainstream publishers, right? They were always saying, wow, wow. I was like, I always used to wonder, like, why are they saying that book only downloaded 5,000 times and you're saying, wow. Like, for me, like, coming from technology side, 5,000 is like a little low number, right? But then I quickly realized that in publishing industry, 5,000 is a pretty good number.
Yeah, sure, I completely agree there. But 2,000 sale in print is a bestseller, so.
And the reason why this is happening is because we have a huge market.
So is that happening?
That is happening. Right? But I mean, again, this requires effort. Right? We have to play with the App Store game, like keyword optimization, the hustling on the Twitter and blog, just getting the word out, right? But I think it pays back.
From India, I would like to little experience. One is this Wigaden, there's a regional magazine in Tamil. They started off with an aggregator kind of a magazine, Maxter, which is an application where it puts various different magazines out there. On seeing the response now, almost a year back, they've done their own branded white label app, which we happen to develop for them, and it's going places. But definitely the content is the driver. But yes, these are examples, and that motivated us to get into this platform and educating books and probably the problems which we were discussing, like for the Indian language, the readers and stuff, which cannot be directly posted to any of the app stores and all that. So that's where we all feel, we do have a space and we can contribute to the results.
And I'll just general point I'm making here. One of the negative side of the App Store I've seen is that winner wins by a big margin. So I mean, there's a reason why there are more Twinkle or Dr. Seuss or those like popular Western titles, right? Because people are searching like that. And one of the tendencies I've seen is like content coming from India or from Asian market is having those names in the title. So the books might be, let's say, ABC, but it will say like Cinderella ABC.
Okay.
So,
Is that intelligent or is that silly?
well, you're getting the hits, so you downloads, right?
Alright.
So, I mean, just putting your catalog in a spreadsheet and just doing this global check, right? Okay, and then put against rest of the world literature or apps, how does it fare in the attention gathering process? Right? That exercise needs to be done.
What about the pricing? Is it parallel to the print books, e-books pricing? Is it parallel to the print price or do you have any?
You can answer the ebook part. The apps are like pretty standard, like 99 cents, 199, 299. Ebook pricing is very much influenced by Amazon has a agency pricing.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think not the Amazon, generally it's less than the print book price, because the fact that no paper is used and some of the workflow that is used in the regular publishing is avoided here in making a basic ebook, not the app books that we talk about. But again, there are cases where there is a study from the latest statistics from Amazon. Last year alone, the average price of the ebook is higher than the previous year. That is a significant improvement, close to 14% more than the previous year. So
You can provide some interactive applications, so whether it can be priced higher or not.
Why
yes,
was it higher? Why was it higher the following year?
sorry.
Why was the cost higher? What you said?
No, that's the cost. The ebook prices are higher, so they are able to command. I think the type of content that is getting into the market also is changing significantly.
So it was an enhanced version. It was just not.
Not just enhanced. There are some technology books which was not there before. So those average price of the books itself was much higher than what it was the previous year. And it's all the last 4 year story, right? It all started in 2008, and in just 3 years, I think 2011, more ebooks are sold by Amazon,
Do you have any figures for India at all?
No, we tried, but I don't think
You
there
know,
are.
can I answer this by being really radical on this? Why do you care about India online? I mean, you're on the internet, right? And your distribution is internet. Yeah? I mean, why are you so keen on just addressing the Indian market?
So we
But the rights
are
are
present only in the Indian market.
The internet is global.
Yeah. That's a very valid question.
I mean, if you're selling in Landmark and Sapna Book House, also I can understand that.
In some cases, Indian publishers, is one whom we had worked with earlier, who wanted to publish their e-books on Amazon, wanted the prices to be surely higher than the price in India, because the print distributors kind of insisted that your e-books cannot cannibalize the print sales in India. So we priced the book much higher so that it will only attract American and diaspora kind of audience. So there are some people who will price it significantly higher. And
But
if the
that's
print
true of
se-
even print books.
Yes.
I mean, that's true of just the print itself. There are companies in this country as publishers who even today have differential pricing for the same book sold in different markets.
Yeah, that's between international. The problem with the ebook is that you can have an Indian downloading it from Amazon or an American downloading it from Amazon. So
Right.
the risk that they want to avoid is the Indian not downloading the ebook at a cheaper price or equal price as your print.
We've done
But
that.
across
actually.
international markets, print book price is very good. That I agree. But it's only in a case where ebooks is just getting launched, where the print books are still selling.
And
So
what will
pricing
be
is quite
what will be
dependent
the
on
share
all
of a publisher and the service provider? So like Maxter and our magazines will be provided through a Maxter newsstand. What will be the share between a publisher and the service provider?
The rule of thumb says you bring the content, I bring the technology, so there will be the
What will be
ownership.
the
So usually the net sale, as you know, these stores, they do take a percentage. For example, Apple takes 30%. After all that, different stores, the payment gateway charges, this, that, whatnot. Usually people talk in terms of, at least the bookstore, the aggregated types, the Maxter type which you're talking about. On the net sale proceeds, we take a revenue share.
How much?
We talk in this language. You've been continuing in technology. We are investing. We don't take any
50-50 or they are favoring the publisher or they
It's
are
mostly 50-50, but depending on the exclusivity you are demanding.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that is it. That is definitely.
And they will be charging you for onboarding also, right? For putting all the content in the first instance. It's a different topic. How many of you are actually looking into in-app purchase model?
What does that mean?
I would strongly recommend looking into it. That's going to be the standard model of how these content will get consumed. The idea being that in your shell app, you throw in a lot of free stuff, and the rest of your titles come as like in-app. You're selling them within your app. But before that, you kind of like on their trust by giving them a lot of free stuff.
In terms of cost, how different, I mean, what's the investment change if one was looking at coming up with like one product, one app, and if I say that, okay, in the future I am going to come up with other apps, therefore to start itself with an aggregator app, what's the differential of investment in terms of, 2x, 3x, 4x that one needs to budget for?
I think it is not 2x for sure, because aggregator apps are pretty simple. A lot of the app development companies already have built their aggregator platforms. So it's just a matter of customizing it with your skin, your branding, color combinations, etc., and building your payment gateway and stuff like that and launching. I don't know if you put an exact, it's not surely 2x. It's probably between 1 maybe 1.5x or something. Because that's an initial app that has to go into the store, and then you can keep adding content that will come inside. So
Does it also bring down the cost of subsequent app development in any way? So if I was to develop, let's say, I'm sorry, I'm just getting some numbers in. If I was to develop 3 apps separately over a period of 1 year, and instead when I start, I first develop a aggregator app and a single app, and then I add those 2 apps, what will be the differential pricing in terms of, again, just figures in terms of percentages? Do I save overall? So in a year, if I still come up with 3 apps, 3 individual apps versus an aggregator app and 1 app initially and then 2 apps in 1 year, will there be a differential in my pricing? So am I in the long term saving because I went ahead with an initial investment approach?
Yeah, that's a great question because both sides have their merits and drawbacks, right?
Okay.
If you're just doing 3 apps standalone separately, and you get to enjoy the initial bump on the App Store because Apple pushes the new release on the top. Right?
Okay.
So you get that bump 3 times. Right?
Okay.
And you get like 100 into 300 keywords coverage, right? So you can really experiment more on your keywords. Right? These benefits you will not get if you have an aggregator app and subsequent releases are coming within the app.
Oh, okay. But then the whole purpose then is defeated, no? So if I am a children book publisher, generally the themes that I'm writing on are completely varied and different. So I wouldn't want the keywords to be the same. They shouldn't be. So let's say if there is a story which is on, like a takeoff on Ramayana, and I've created an app on it, whereas there's another one which is on teaching math, and there's a third one which is like a language something, then the searching of that 3 apps is a completely different thing. I mean, there's only one commonality, children section and maybe age. Those are the only 3-4 keywords which will be common. Otherwise, all the other keywords should be different for me to be found.
I mean, again, it depends on how you plan your overall engagement.
Okay.
If you have an offline relationship with the user, if you're emailing them, if you're using notification in a nice creative way, not spamming them, but
Right,
in a
I
creative way,
understand
right? Then you can manage wonderful relationship using aggregator. But those are the small things.
So you're saying that if my B2C model is sort of already working, which means that I have a basic minimal substantial customer base where I have some relationship which is direct, right? And then I come up with an app store and then I'm sort of doing like a spread of mouth, which I mean first I'm sort of sending them a notification and then that leads to a spread and then I use some social media and blah 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 blah. Then the chances that I am able to aggregate people and make it into a forum using my store becomes much higher. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of lost you in between.
Basically, if you are trying to rely on the app store for sales, then you just put it on the app store and hope it will sell, it won't happen.
No, that happens once in a fluke for an angry bird. So I understand that completely.
So you'll have to sell. I mean, you'll have to ensure that.
Which is pretty much it with any product, right? Even your print products, you sell, you market.
Yeah. So
That is okay.
Most of the aggregator apps work on some kind of relationship between every episode of stuff that you are pushing into the aggregator app. If you're going to have one aggregator app that has got a map plus a fantasy book,
Doesn't work.
it may not work. I don't know, maybe it is just if you want to project your brand as an aggregator and put everything inside. But I think it is very subjective. It's based on what kind of, for example, there is an Amar Chitra Kada aggregator app that pushes up Amar Chitra. That is nice. Or there's a Chota Beam app. It contains a lot of episodes.
Those are easier solutions for people who are anyways niched themselves. So a Chota Beam is niched to a character, right? It's that niched. So then there are hajar stories that are happening on the same character. Whereas as a publisher in generally, they are publishing on multiple genres, right? And across age groups at times.
One place where the aggregator works is if you are creating your ebook reader app for your company, like Penguin has its own ebook reader app, let's just say. Then any type of any book that I buy from Penguin comes inside my app through in-app purchase. Then it's straightforward because it's a Penguin reader app. It can have Dracula, it can have Huckleberry Finn. I think it isn't really. But when you talk about educational and especially the interactive apps like what Bridges can for already, then I think it is nice to have a relationship between the stuff that goes inside of it.
So it's a lot to do with where my brand positioning is to start with. If I am a brand already and people associate with that brand, then probably starting with an aggregator app with a brand and then adding anything to it makes more sense. Whereas if I'm just trying out, then it probably makes more sense to go with one.
Then there is another, the freemium model which is talked about in all these startup companies. The freemium models, you have an app, you create a light version which is free, and that kind of gives a preview of your app, and that then you launch as a paid app, and for every app you launch, you do that. So that way you get a lot of customer audience into your app first because it's free, and then you make money over your paid version.
Or you may even decide to whether have the paid app or not.
And there are other combinations. Absolutely, nobody is buying, downloading your. There are other combinations. There are apps where you have an aggregator app. In the aggregator app, actually, it's free. Inside the aggregator app, let's say you have 200 games.
Right.
Each of these games have only version 1 of it. And for if you have to go next level, you buy. Then it's a separate app that it's not at all linked to the aggregator. It's an individual app purchase. So aggregator is used to market your free apps and then link it to your paid apps. So all these, there are many apps.
I think we'll end the session here. This is the last workshop. Thank you, it's been impressed. Thank you, Thank you.
I think Leo is not here, but this is the last session, so we can give a